Okay.
So welcome everyone to the May Women Painters West meeting. I'm going to turn this over to Nancy Lawrence as we're going to present the scholarship winners for this year, and then we will switch over to Richard, who's going to give an amazing demo. All right, so Nancy.
Okay. Okay, I'm Nancy Lawrence, and I'm the chair of the scholarship committee. One of the things that I like the best about this organization is that we get to go and give scholarship awards every year. And this is a great pleasure. And for the past several years, we've been going to Otis School of Art and Design. And we continually go back there because the quality of the work is so good. And the faculty members, Alex Slade and Meg Cranston, are really terrific about assisting us with having the students set up the work in a way that makes it, a pleasure to look at and to choose our award winners. The scholarship committee is made up of the current president and the past presidents. And this year, there were 6 of us who went to Otis. And in addition to myself, there was Liz Tucker, our president, Arlene Weinstock, Lynn Goodall, June Phelps, and Susan Rossman. We found the work to be really exceptional, and I'm happy to present awards to 4 students. So I am going to share my screen, and let's see if I can do this.
Wait, hold on. I think I need to make you a.
Oh,
Hold,
yeah,
hold on one sec.
yeah.
Give me one sec.
Okay.
Make you a co-host. There you go. Now you can share your screen.
Can everybody see?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, we are giving 4 awards today. The first award is the Brenda Bag Award for Excellence in Water Media, and it is generously given by Gerald Bagg, whose late wife Brenda, a member of Women Painters West, was a master watercolor painter. Mr. Bagg's support has been ongoing, and we greatly appreciate his generosity. So thank you very much, Mr. Bagg.
Yeah,
And
you're
this award is going to Pena Espinoza, and he works in oil and water media. And this is his painting called Free Form, which is oil and water media on canvas. And it's big and it's beautiful. So, Pena, do you have anything you'd like to say about your work?
Hi, hello. I firstly wanted to say thank you. I'm immensely grateful to be receiving this award. Um, uh, I would say that the context by which my works exists in is I'm very much interested in um I'm interested in cultural forms of indoctrination which have served as aids, compromises, and or forms of undercurrents of violence towards communities. Um, and so that's the conceptual part of this work, but other than that, I'm a heavily invested painter. Given that this was a water media um, award. I do have a background of being very invested in watercolor. I would say that I learned my chops as a painter and watercolor before I did oil. And so because of that, I approach oil painting and materialistic ways of painting larger works through a mindset of watercolor. Specifically for this work, I dye my canvases first and then go about a process of glazing, whether it be with water-based mediums and or oil. And then it's constantly a back and forth of those forms of painting, whether it be navigating it conceptually or formally or objectively. And yeah, that was like my quick little spiel. I get a little nervous that I might talk too much, but
That's
I'm
okay, you're
still
doing
very
great.
grateful. And yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for your explanation, and your work is beautiful. Congratulations to you, and best of luck in your career.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to the next award, which is, okay, now why am I having trouble with this? Hang on a second. Okay, the next award is Antonio Perez, and he's getting one of 2 Women Painters Best Awards. And his work, I'm going to show you 3 slides before I ask him to speak. Okay, this is the front. I'm assuming that's the front.
Yes.
And okay, and this is the back of the same piece. And so here's what the front looks like. And here's what the back looks like. And it is made of cinder blocks. And Antonio, you can tell us more about it.
Yeah, I just wanted to start off as well with thanking you guys. Doing this out of my car. I just finished dropping off a piece for an art show that's going on this weekend here in Chinatown. This piece is the images are transferred. It's like an experimental process that I've been kind of developing. It takes a long time. It's very tedious to transfer these images onto the rough texture of the cinder blocks, but it's I guess it comes from a very deep place right now. I recently lost my father 2 months ago, and it's pretty much using Mesoamerican symbology and current symbology to tell a story. To tell my father passed of cancer, and it was a long fight, 2 years before it took over. And I've been digging deep into the symbols from Aztecs and Mayans, and finding connections and finding symbols and then applying my own symbology to them, and also using some of the things that my dad had taught me throughout my life, and combining those 2.
Well, it's an amazing piece. Can you tell me how you get the image on here?
Yeah, I can. It is. I have to prime the cinder blocks with a gel medium, and then I'm doing I'm doing pretty much a regular image transfer with either from images that I've taken or images that I've found, and you lay the paper onto the gel medium, and you're literally it's like you're taking off the layers of paper and leaving the ink
Right.
on the gel medium.
So it's a transfer.
So it's a transfer, yeah,
Wow.
but a very tedious transfer that can go bad really quick, because
Well,
if you don't do it correct, or if you rush it, it's gonna come off.
right. Well, you
Mm.
did a wonderful job on it. It doesn't,
Thank you.
we can't see the agony that went into getting the transfer
You
off.
can see it in my finger. My fingerprints are pretty much rubbed off at this point.
All right. Well, congratulations to you. I'm
Thank you
very
very much.
sorry about the loss of your father. I know that must be very tough, and my condolences, our condolences.
Thank you.
Okay, and I'm gonna go back to these 2, and our next award is Judy Hong, and she also is getting a Women Painters West Award for her painting called Free Radical. And Judy, I love the title of this. I suspect that there may be a double meaning here. So You may speak about it if you would like to.
Hello, everybody. My name is Judy, and yeah, the free radical is actually the glass sandwich that is placed on the left side of the table. And I was thinking a lot about painting because I've actually started with installations before diving deep into paintings. The glass sandwich, you cannot eat the glass sandwich, nor does it serve any purpose, just to be a visual. And I feel like the glass sandwich, it also lives on its own, and even so, no one is really paying attention to it. You can see my father and the artist, which is me, on the right side, trying to reach for the glass sandwich out of curiosity. The painting is very personal, and it actually represents our family dynamics with the matriarchal system. And
Hmm.
Thank you. It's really beautiful and impressive and huge.
yeah.
Very much. And congratulations to you and all
you.
our best. Okay, and the final award, and I have to escape again to figure this out. Okay, the final award is to Henry O, and this is the Barbara Frankel Award. Barbara Frankel was the chair of the scholarship committee for, I believe, 30 years. And she moved away a few years ago, and now I'm trying very hard to walk in her shoes. I never will be able to, but I'm giving it a try. Okay, so Henry did, I'm going to show you three slides. Okay, he did a series called the Wallet series, and each of these paintings is 40 by 30 inches, and here they are. And I'm going to go back up to the three of them so you can see them all at once. And Henry, you're on.
Well, I'm Henry, and thank you for the opportunity and for allowing me to be here. Yeah, so this series is a series of wallet photo paintings, and it actually sparked from just like, so my mom has a photo of me in her wallet, and during COVID, there was a time where there was a lot of hate kind of directed towards people that look like me. And there was an incident specifically in Atlanta where there was a shooting and some of the names were very similar to my mother's name. And it kind of got me thinking about, like, I kind of get these thoughts sometimes, kind of like the worst case scenarios, like what if that was me kind of situation. And how do you ID the person? You know, after an incident like that, you kind of check the wallet first, right? So it might be a bit of an outdated thing. I don't think a lot of people carry wallets anymore with all the digital cashless systems and stuff now. But like for me, I feel like that photo in a wallet is very sentimental. And, you know, simply putting that border around that picture, I think adds an extra layer of, you know, just yeah, just the extra layer of sentiment. And so that's kind of how this series started. So I get photos of family members, of myself, of friends that are really close to me, and I paint it. And yeah, I actually have like 4 more of these that I didn't show. But yeah, that's how I kind of started with this series of wallet photos.
It's a beautiful series. We also really liked how you made the snap of the wallet on the one on the left. That was very clever.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you very much. And the series is beautiful. I would love to see more of them. If you want to email me some images, I would love to see the rest of them.
Sure, I'll do that.
Yeah, okay, wonderful. That ends our, let me stop my share. I wish all of you the very best. I'm not sure how to get out of this now. Okay, here we go. Hang on a second. Okay, I guess we're back to. Okay, are we back to gallery?
Yeah, we're back to
Okay.
gallery. Yep.
Thank you to all of the students. I wish you all the best. You're wonderful artists, and we're so pleased to have been able to get to know your work. So best wishes to you. If you have the time and want to stay, we have a speaker now, Rich
Yes.
Gallego. And if you don't have the time and need to get back to your classes, we certainly will understand that. So, Liz, you're on.
All right, Zoni, you're on.
Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zoni Gordon, and it's a pleasure to introduce our special guest this afternoon, Mr. Richard Gallego, an outstanding plein air artist and teacher, and a signature landscape artist. Rich has been painting the landscape for almost 30 years. His longtime love of nature's wild places have taken him from Arizona's Canyon de Chelly to the beaches of Hawaii, New Mexico, and to the glaciers of Alaska. So many places in between, all in search of amazing, since he loves to paint. He refers to his obsession with painting and describes it as my magnificent affliction. I do love that, Rich.
Mhm.
He is constantly searching for new ways to reveal the natural world to others through paint. He teaches weekly plein air workshops in Southern California. I think I've attended one of those, Rich, and has taught biannual plein air painting workshops for Cloudcraft art workshops in Cloudcraft, New Mexico. And for 8 years, taught week-long workshops at the Teos Art School in New Mexico. He is also a member of the Laguna Plein Air Painters Association and was juried into their Best of Plein Air show, 2015 and 2016, among others. Rich has been featured in several articles in Plein Air magazine. I always see that website, and has appeared as a featured artist in American Art Collector magazine. He has been represented by several galleries in Laguna Beach, Monrovia, and Cheyenne, Wyoming, San Marino, and Claremont. He was twice a faculty member for the annual Plein Air Convention and Expo in Santa Fe, and for PACE 23 in Denver. So many more accolades. May I present Mr. Richard Gallego.
Thank you, Zoni. Thank you guys all for being here and for having me here today. The first thing that occurs to me is that I got to shorten that bio down a little bit. Excuse me. I'm going to ask your forbearance a little bit here. I'm dealing with a little bit of a cold, so if I sound a little bit stuffed up, forgive me. So the first thing that I wanted to talk to you folks about today, it's a topic that started rattling around in my own head because of a small girl who once stopped when I was painting and asked me a very simple question. And that question was, why do you paint? And the truth of it was, I had never asked myself that question. I just knew I liked doing it, you know. But when she asked me that question, it forced me to think about it. And the more I thought about it, the more important it became, because the answer, in, you know, for me at least, is I felt this sort of innate understanding of the importance of beauty in our lives. I hadn't thought about it and formulated, you know, ways to articulate it at that point. But in the years since then, I've done a lot of thinking about it. And, you know, I think that being a painter is a gift. And I don't mean a gift in the sense of we're able to make pretty pictures, although that's a very nice thing as well. The gift from my perspective is when you paint a landscape specifically, but really anything, you're forced to observe the world, the natural world, at levels that are a lot deeper than most people, you know, get an opportunity to. What I mean by that is, if you're, and some of you who might have heard me speak on this before. Forgive me if I'm a bit redundant here, but if you're driving down the street and you see this vertical brown thing with a bunch of green around it, you think to yourself, that's a tree, don't drive into it, right? That's all you have to think about to make sure that you survive. That's survival mode. But if you're going to paint that tree, you've got to look at all the positive and negative shapes. You've got to look at all the subtle shifts in value and temperature and the differences in edges. And you're observing it at a much greater level, deeper level. And the gift for me lies in that process. What it means is that I get to observe the natural world at a level that's much deeper than most people who are rushing about, taking care of the responsibilities of their lives. And so I see my job as a landscape painter primarily as it's my job to take a piece of that natural world and paint it on a canvas so that they can see it. It's amazing to me how many people see a painting and they'll say, "Oh, that's really beautiful. Where is that?" And you tell them where it is, and they realize it's someplace they drive past every day, but they've never noticed it. And my thinking that's evolved since that conversation with that little girl is, and forgive me, I don't mean to get preachy on people. I'm not going to do that, but I'm a believer, and I believe God puts beauty in our world for a reason. We all have challenges. We all have difficulties that we face at one time or another in our lives. And I believe that if we stop and observe the beauty that's there, even for a moment, it puts us in a better frame of mind and maybe makes us better able to handle whatever challenges we're dealing with. I know that that's true in my case. So being an artist is something that I feel is in itself a gift that's been given to me. It's a privilege to be able to create something that other people can look at, and maybe for a moment or two they can lose themselves in it and escape from whatever difficulties they're dealing with. And I just think that's a real privilege. So if I were to run into that little girl again sometime, she wouldn't be a little girl anymore, but if I knew who she was, I would thank her profusely, because she caused me to go deeper into why I do what I do. And it's been a really interesting journey, because it's led to things like trying to understand how, first of all, what is beauty, right? I mean, we've all heard the phrase that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I wanted to know, what is that? I mean, you know what it means, but is there some deeper meaning to it? So I started reading a lot and watching a lot of videos by different neurologists who talk about the connection between neurology, neuroscience, and art. I don't know how many of you have ever come across Immanuel Kant's treatise on beauty and aesthetic, but it's a wonderful paper that talks about the difference between utilitarian beauty and beauty that just exists for beauty's sake, just pure aesthetic beauty. And so what are we trying to achieve when we paint? And are there ways that we can increase the beauty of something that we see? For those of you who are plein air painters, if you've gone outside and you've looked at a scene, sometimes you have this perfect scene. If you're standing on the Merced River up in Yosemite and you see Half Dome in the distance, and it's pretty much ready made for you. But there are times when you go out someplace and it's not so apparent, and you got to really kind of look around and figure out what is here that is significant. And I think that for me, having a deeper understanding of what beauty is and what it means to my life and what it can mean to others, what it's done is it's opened up my mind to other possibilities of composition. So there are times when I'll see a scene and I'll think, well, there's maybe a painting or two here. And then the more I think and the more I study it, the more I absorb it, I realize that there's probably 5 or 6 different paintings to be had there. And that, I think, is a really fortunate thing for a painter, because you need options, right? And I don't think any of us want to go out and paint exactly what we see, like a photograph necessarily. But if you can take something, the shapes, and understand why they're interesting and why they work well together, somebody just asked about the book by Immanuel Kant. The paper was called Treatise on Beauty and Aesthetic. I wish I could tell you where I read it. That's the name of the paper. I don't know if it was in a separate book or not, but it should be easy enough to find online. So anyway, I'll go out to places that people drive by all the time and don't think anything of. And sort of mine them for something that's significant, that's beautiful. I'm going to show you an example of that in a moment here, if you don't mind. I've got a couple of small plein air sketches. Most of you know about the California poppy fields out here. I live out in Palmdale, so the poppy reserve is maybe a half an hour from where I live. And every spring, if there are poppies, and there weren't any this year really, all the artists that I know, they all trek out to the poppy reserve to paint the poppies. And that's all well and good. I understand it. Although it's kind of featureless out there. There's not a lot of, anything but the color of the poppies. But near where I live, right off the 14 freeway at Pear Blossom Highway, there's a set of hills that in the springtime looks like this, which to me is a lot more interesting than the poppy reserve, because first of all, there's more than just poppies, but second, there's other features. Now, if it's poppies you want, we get this. Now, these are, 2-hour studies, basically. These are 9x12s. But what is it that makes those scenes beautiful? Now, that idea of beauty being in the eye of the beholder is the same thing that Immanuel Kant talks about in his paper. And it's just the idea that everybody's personal history and their own personal aesthetic, they all bring everything that they need to bear on a scene that they're looking at, or a painting they're looking at, or an object, right? So we don't all see everything the same. We don't all have the same taste. We don't all think the same thing is very beautiful, which is a wonderful thing, because if we did, there would be only a couple of paintings to be had and everybody would be done with it, I guess. I don't know. But the fact that we all see different things in a scene and we all interpret them different, we give emphasis to the color of the poppies or the blue in the water or whatever it might be, it makes for this myriad of possibilities that it's just makes it really exciting to be an artist, in my opinion. But again, it always comes back for me to the importance of beauty in my life. I think it would be a really tragic place and miserable place if we didn't have that. So even though it's a personal thing based on your own histories and aesthetics, like I said, I would hope that people would stop and give that some consideration when they're observing what to paint or deciding what to paint or how to paint it. I just think it will enhance your experience making art. And I know it enhances the experience of the people that view your art. So yeah, so that's what I wanted to say about that. I hope it didn't put anybody to sleep there. A lot of times people do demos and it's all about what color did you use to mix that green, or what brush are you using. And that stuff is all important. I'm not trying to minimize that, but I do think that there are some deeper elements that need to be explored if one wants to really make good art. And to that point, I told Zoni that I would be doing a demo today that's based on a couple of different scenes from Vasquez Rocks. I suspect most of you are familiar with Vasquez Rocks. It's not too far from, it's kind of between where I am and I think where most of you are. It's mostly a desert landscape, and a good part of the year it's very dry and arid and somewhat colorless. But in the springtime, if we've gotten rain, it gets to be something quite different. And so today I'm going to do a piece. This is, well, first, this is an 11x14 that I did there recently. Oh. And you can see that there are all these yellow flowers on the ground there. They're called gold fields, and they grow in quite profuse manner in the springtime, and it really changes the way the whole place looks. But the scene that I want to do today is variation on this. Make sure there's no glare. Can you guys all see that okay?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Everybody's so quiet. By the way, if anybody has questions, please don't hesitate. I want to talk to you, not at you, or with you, not at you. So
oh, good.
Yeah, I don't mind at all. So this is a scene from Vasquez Rocks, but it's really two scenes because some of these junipers up here were a little further off to the left, but I wanted to include the wash that's in there. So I basically took elements of one scene and elements of the other and merged them into this one painting. And this is a plein air piece that I did a couple weeks ago. I'll put this over here so I can see it when I'm painting. And that gets to the other thing. I don't know how many of you paint outdoors and feel like you have to paint only what's in front of you. You don't. I tell my students all the time that when you go outside to paint, everything out there is reference material. Now, there are some things that are somewhat iconic, like what I mentioned, Half Dome earlier. You don't want to take too many liberties with that because then it won't look like Half Dome. And people will notice that. But your basic landscape, the way I see my job as a landscape painter is to take the elements in it that are going to make a good picture and put them together, compose them in a way that makes a compelling piece. And sometimes that's easy because everything's pretty much right there. But other times you got to work a little bit. You got to delete something, or you got to import something from a quarter mile to the right, or whatever you got to do, you got to do. So that was a combination of two scenes. And if you guys are okay with it, I'm going to get started. Does anybody have any questions before I start painting on the panel here?
When you are combining different elements into your scene, do you do a thumbnail before you start, or do you feel like you understand it well enough that you can just bring it in?
Yeah, the responsible part of me, the responsible instructor in me wants to tell you, yes, do a thumbnail. But the truth of it is I kind of just do it in my head at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I used to do thumbnails, and I found that it after a while, it wasn't as necessary and it just took more time. Now, what I will do is after I've done the plein air piece, if I want to make it a larger studio piece, first I'll do a drawing of the plein air piece, if that makes sense, just the basic shapes, and I'll diagram it. Where am I leading the eye? What direction is the eye moving, and where is it stopping? All that kind of thing. Because just because I have a plein air piece that worked out well in maybe an 8x10 or something, doesn't mean that it's going to work out that well in a 24x36. So I need to make sure that there's a direction, that the viewer is being led through it a certain way, and they're lingering where I want them to, and then accelerating to other parts when I want them to. That's a whole other lesson, actually. I'm happy to talk about it, but yeah, I don't do thumbnails up front most of the time, but I will diagram them later on before I start committing to a big studio canvas. Yeah.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm going to reposition my phone here so you guys can get as good a look at the canvas as possible. I do need to put it off the side a bit so that I can actually fit in there to paint. And what I've done, this is a oil primed linen, which is my preferred substrate. And I basically just toned it with a little bit of thinned out burnt umber. So the first thing I want to do is establish my horizon line. And there's going to be a lot of greens in this painting. So I'll just start with that. And everything that I'm doing right now is basically going to be covered over at some point. So I'm not terribly concerned about it looking perfect. In fact, I will tell you that every painting I've ever done has looked horrible at some point. But it's really just the process. So I want to get that, and then I want to get the ridge line back here. And by the way, I want to get the feeling of the place. I'm not so concerned with getting a perfect replication of it as I am getting the feeling. And I will frequently paint things darker than they need to be at the beginning, just because I know I can come. This is oil, and I can go back and lighten them up anytime I want. So right now, I want to get these junipers placed. And one of the things that I'm keeping in mind is that there are all kinds of studies that have been done in, again, some of these neuroscientists that are interested in the connection to art, that asymmetric rhythms are more interesting to the human brain than say something that's a common time. Like if any of you are musicians and you read music, you know the difference between a time signature that's 4/4 or common time. It's 4 beats per measure, and it kind of sounds like right? Very, very even spaces between. That's very accessible. It's why most pop music is written that way, because it's easy for anybody to understand. But our human brains are stimulated more and at a deeper level if we use asymmetric rhythms. And how do I use that in a painting? Well, I make sure that when I have dark masses against light, whether they're fence posts or junipers or whatever, that the spaces between them are not equidistant. And I'll show you that when I get this developed just a bit more. I'm assuming that most of you maybe saw some of my work online, so you decided that it was worth spending your afternoon there with me. I hope. So you'll notice that this doesn't look like much at this point. And I always get a kick out of when people come by out when I'm outdoors painting and they'll see something in this state and look at me like, well, you're not much of an artist, you know. But they don't stay like this. So I just want to get these objects placed. Now I'll give you a real good example of the asymmetric rhythms I'm talking about just right up here. Nowhere near done with any of this, but if you notice, there's no space between the edge of the panel and this 2/3 of a juniper. Then we have a space from here to here between these two. Then we have a much longer space between this one, and a slightly different size space from here to the edge. They're not equidistantly spaced. And again, you know, studies show that people engage at a much deeper level and for a longer period of time when the rhythms are asymmetric. And I figure if I can use anything at my disposal to make people look at my paintings for a longer period of time, that's a win. It's what I want to do. Now you got other stuff going on here that you got to fill some things in. But again, in filling some of these things in, I want to make sure of certain things, I want to make sure these are not all the same size, not all the exact same shape. And when you're painting junipers, especially, they do tend to have kind of this puffball appearance sometimes. And you want to make sure that it doesn't look too much like that. You got to find the different angles and shapes that are available. And if they're not, then you got to make them, because if something looks too much like something else, and like it looks too much like a pom-pom or something, it is going to be distracting. And I'm not above taking liberties to make my paintings more interesting.
I like that. Looks like a pom-pom.
Yeah, well, they do, you know, and so, for example, if you notice that, and now I haven't gotten the light on them yet, so it's going to change a bit, but if you notice they're a little too symmetrical, you might have to change nature a bit because it's more interesting. And to that point, there is an idea called peak shifting, which I don't know how many of you are familiar with. Peak shifting is basically changing the aspect ratio of a shape. In other words, let me do it over here where you can see. No, I'll do it here. If you have a triangle, maybe you've got a rock that's basically shaped like a triangle. And I've seen rocks that are that shape, right? It's not terribly interesting. So if I really need that rock to be in my painting, maybe it's better if I peak shift, I change the aspect ratio, make it look more like that. Because that is not as symmetrical. It doesn't draw as much attention. It feels more organic. So if I need to change a shape to make it a better shape, and by better, I mean more useful to the painting, then I am perfectly happy to do that. Okay, let me get my my sandy wash established there before I get too much further here. So usually what I do is essentially I'll get my basic shapes figured out and placed where I need them. Now, this wash, what we have here is there's a curve, right? And you want to make it look like it's lying flat where it needs to be. The thing about painting curves is you don't want to paint these you know, these serpentine lazy S kind of things. You want to make a series of straight lines that actually results in a curve. And the reason for that is, again, it feels more organic, and it feels more confident to the viewers. They may not know why it feels more confident, but they'll notice if you're doing these S things that are just weak. So you always want to try to make curves that are straight lines resulting in curves. And folks, again, please, don't be digging for things to say if you don't have anything, but if you have a question or a comment, please don't be shy. It doesn't bother me in the least.
Richard, you're using water miscible oils?
No,
Oh, you're using traditional. Okay,
yeah, traditional oils.
got it.
So I'm gonna get that background mountain placed where I want it. And so I gotta mix up some blue, and I don't care that it's the perfect color just yet. I'm more interested in shapes and how they're gonna work.
What colors do you use on your
My
palette?
regular, just my palette. My palette normally consists of chromatic black, which is a dark. It's not a true black. It's a mix of phthalocyan emerald and quinacridone red. So it's a transparent green and a dark transparent red. So they already neutralize each other a bit. That's what I use a lot in here. So it's the chromatic black, and then I use cadmium lemon, cad red light, ultramarine blue, titanium white, and I usually have a bit of cadmium orange on my palette as well.
What brand of paints do you use, Rich?
Well, I love Williamsburg, but they're very expensive. And the truth of the matter is I use a lot of Gamblin for a couple of reasons. One is it's very consistent. And by that, I mean the actual consistency of the paint doesn't vary very much from one color to the next. And for the price point, I think it's a good quality paint. Now, there's a lot of good paints out there. You know, Michael Harding makes a really good product. As I said, Williamsburg is my favorite, but they cost quite a bit more. So I really find there's nothing wrong with Gamblin at all. I've done a lot of paintings that I'm very happy with Gamblin paints. So yeah, right now I'm just trying to get a little distance implied here. And as we all know, warms advance, cools recede. This is not going to stay the same way. By the way, the blue that I'm mixing right now is a bit of ultramarine, a little bit of titanium white, and a little bit of that cad orange. Any color that I mix is going to have some of its complement in it. So if I'm painting blue, there'll be a little orange in it. Anything green is going to have a little bit of red in it, and so forth. Okay, I still need to make one big juniper over here. And for what it's worth, I'm a big fan of Rosemary and Company brushes. Again, not that makes all the difference, but if you like your tools and you don't have to fight your tools, that's usually a good thing.
Those are the best.
Yep.
Yeah, you know, I think one of the things I've been observing lately is because of the popularity of Rosemary brushes, I think some of the other, and tell me if any of you guys have noticed the same thing, I think some of the other manufacturers have had to up their game. I've got some brushes from the last plein air convention. You know, they give you what do they call it, a swag bag. And it has some Princeton brushes in them, Aspen series. I'd never used them before, but that's what this one is. And I have to tell you, they're quite nice.
The Princeton brushes are amazing. Every time I pick up one of my students' brushes, and like, wow, this is a really nice brush. And I look down and it's a Princeton, and I've been very pleased with them.
Yes,
I was
me
pleasantly
too.
surprised.
Yeah, because it didn't used to be. It was just affordable and
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was just fine, but it wasn't great.
And that's what I mean. I have to feel like, Rosemary has kind of forced everybody else to sort of raise their game.
Yeah.
Turkel brushes I like as well, but again, those I've used them because they were given to me, not because I went and bought them. The only ones I actually buy really are the Rosemary's.
What is it about the rosemary brushes that have kept you using them?
A couple of things. Number one, I know they're handmade, and they're very picky about the bristles that they use, and they keep their shape a lot. If you take care of them, they keep their shape better than other brushes that I have used in the past. And I think they're surprisingly inexpensive given the quality.
And their shipping is really fast.
Yeah, they're very responsive. I get mine from place down in Texas, Wind River Arts,
Oh,
and you call them on one day and they're usually there by day 3 at the latest.
Monarch, Winsor Newton Monarch brushes are also quite nice.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, again, that happens sometimes. If one person starts raising the quality, if the others want to stay in the game, they got to respond. So that's a good thing to me.
Yep.
Okay. And I want to bring this up a bit more. Do we have a lot of plein air painters in this group, or mostly studio, or?
Yes.
Yes to both. Well,
It's funny, as a woman, I like plein air painting, but I don't always feel comfortable going out by myself.
sure. Yeah.
That's
And
true.
so that's
Me
always,
too.
Well, that's why I belong to 3 plein air groups.
yeah, that's smart, April.
That's the smart thing to do. Yeah, we have one here, and other groups will invite you sometimes to join them.
Yeah. One of the best. But one that I go to is Urban Sketchers LA, which you really sketch, but you're out in all sorts of interesting places, putting down
Yeah.
what you're sitting in front of, whether it's a hill or a travel town or Griffith Park and then there are smaller groups that maybe 5 or 6 of us. I just went to South Pasadena this morning and we painted around the library. And so you have company, Liz, and people to talk to or check in with. You're not just sitting out there on the roadside by yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be. I'm fortunate that I don't think I look like a very easy target, and so people don't typically, bother me in the sense of any bad intentions or anything like that. But I have had some interesting interactions when I've been out painting by myself.
Oh yeah.
You just never know who you're going to run into.
Yep.
Well, next Thursday, my group called Thursday Plein Air Painters out of Mid-Valley Art Association, we're going to Vasquez Rock. We've been there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so there will be about 6 of us, and we carpool. It's
That's
fabulous.
this coming Thursday, you said?
Yeah.
That's about 15 minutes from where I live. So.
Oh, I think some of those people know you too.
Yeah.
Lynn Fearman is our person.
Oh yeah. Is it Lynn and Daryl Yee? Is he part of that?
Oh yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
He might go.
I haven't seen Lynn in forever.
Yeah, I was with her this morning. She said, "Oh, you should see Richard. Go home and go to your Zoom class."
That's sweet. Yeah, she used to work at Siegel Fine Art a long time ago when I was one of the artists there, and that's where I met her.
Yeah.
Yeah, Monrovia. All right, so I'm just going to start getting some of the more important elements knocked in here. And if somebody can kind of keep me advised as to what I'm dealing with time-wise, because I get lost in what I'm doing here. So
Is before 3 o'clock comfortable for most? 2:30 or so. Rich, will that
yeah,
work?
whatever you guys want, it's fine. This is a 12 by 16. It's unlikely that I'll finish it in 40 minutes or whatever, but that's
that's
okay for
good.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
take your time. What kind of green are you using for that highlight?
This
Rich?
right here, that's
No, the one on the bushes.
On the bushes here?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the same mixture with a little bit extra cad lemon in it, and then just a touch of
Okay.
cad. Right, so it's chromatic black, a little bit of cad red light, and then a small amount of cadmium lemon.
Wow.
And in case anybody is interested in why I use cad lemon instead of cad yellow, which I guess is a popular color, it's nothing against cad yellow. It's just that cad lemon is a bit cooler, and I find that if I need to warm it up, I can always add some orange or some red to it.
Wow.
But if I have straight cad yellow and I need it to be cooler, it's very difficult to cool it off. So I prefer cad lemon because I feel like it's more versatile. There are some spots here where I want to make sure that I get some of this bright color in. And by the way, I mentioned poppies earlier. I have seen poppies at Vasquez Rocks, not this year, but I know they do appear there from time to time. So if I do a painting and I feel like it needs a little spark, I am not above putting in a few poppies if I think it's going to improve the painting.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm not trying to make a perfect representation. I want to make something that feels organic and feels believable, and hopefully that people will find some beauty in. This morning I spent about 2.5 hours. I don't know if any of you guys know where Devil's Punch Bowl is.
No.
It's on the backside of the San Gabriel Mountains out near
Pear Blossom.
Yeah, it's down towards Pear Blossom, up in the hills from there.
Oh.
And, not much in the way of yellow or orange, but and I don't even know what these flowers are, to be honest with you, but I was able to get this done, this little scene, all these lavender
wow.
Oh.
Love that.
Yeah, it was just a beautiful little scene, and I thought, well, poppies are great, but they're not the only ones out here,
Is that lupin or maybe?
It wasn't lupin. It looked like a type I've seen in Taos when I've taught there. I've seen Russian thistle that looked very similar, but the color was a little different. So I'm thinking it was probably some variety of thistle. But it was quite pretty. And from there you can see up towards Wrightwood, and there's still a little bit of snow on the ground up there.
Mm.
I'm just going to try and get some coverage here. Now I'm keeping this very thin, so a lot of this is going to get painted over, but I do want it warmer in the foreground. And this is the part that, when people pass by and see me out painting, and if they see it at this point, they kind of wonder, well, that's kind of sloppy looking, They don't realize that it's not the finished product by any means.
You using any kind of medium with your paint?
No, I tend not to use medium. If I thin with anything, it's just a little bit of the Gamsol when I'm painting these thinner layers. If I'm doing a studio piece, then I might use some gel-free medium or something like that. What I really try when I'm painting in the studio, I try to paint as close to the same way I would as I paint outdoors. It just simplifies everything for me.
Have you ever painted in acrylic?
Yes. Yeah, I actually, well, more than people think. My landscapes, I don't do a lot of acrylic landscapes, but I've started doing some portraiture, and some of those are in acrylic. And you know, the different mediums, they all have pros and cons. The thing I like about acrylic is that it dries so fast. And the thing I don't like about it is that it dries so fast.
Exactly.
You know, so
Especially outside.
yeah. Oh yeah. Well, there are the
Especially the desert.
so there's the where the golden in it. Yeah, the open. These are the golden open acrylics.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this set was sent to me by Golden Paints quite a while back. They wanted me to test it and you know, basically do a review. And they're actually kind of nice. I like them. I wouldn't give up oils for them, but they perform better than I expected. What I do paint in quite often is gouache.
Oh.
And I enjoy that quite a bit as well. You know, like I said, they all have different things to recommend them. Now, I just want to get some variety in some of the color. There's a lot of dry stuff in here, even in the springtime. I don't want everything being the same color. And with this paint,
I'm sorry.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
When you paint in gouache, are you always laying out fresh gouache or do you re-wet it?
I re-wet it.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah. And I treat it in a lot of respects, especially when I'm using fresh gouache. I treat it a lot like I do oil paint. I mean, it's kind of, you know, it's water medium, but it's so much more opaque. I kind of jokingly refer to it as watercolor for people with a fear of watercolor. Because I get to treat it like oil paint, right?
Yeah.
But it does, you know, you can get some really, in my opinion, some really amazing results with it. Okay, so one of the things I want to take special care to make sure I do is, one of the things I'm always telling my students about is that one of the most important things to keep in mind, especially after you've got your shapes established as far as where you're going to place them, is value relationships. And it's amazing to me how many people, and it takes time, you know, I didn't do it the first couple of years as often as I should, but to really pay attention to the value relationships. And I don't care if you're painting in a high key or a low key, but if there are 3 steps between the color or the value of the mountain and the sky, then whether it's a 2 and a 5 or you know, a 4 and a 7 doesn't matter, but the relationship has to be accurate. And one of my students that I had this morning has an issue with painting things too dark all the time. And you know, I keep trying to get her to understand that if you just pay more attention to the value relationships, that problem will go away. So, right, this isn't going to be my finished sky, but I want to make sure that I have the relationship I want between the mountain value and the sky value. And that's probably not quite pale enough. It needs a bit of orange in it. And does anybody out here that's watching this today fight to put more paint on?
Fight to put more paint on?
Yeah, like do you have a tendency not to paint thickly enough?
Yes, honestly.
Well, it's
Yes.
a common, the reason I ask is it's a common issue. I think that there's an innate sense that it's easier to control the paint if you don't have as much to deal with. But
Yeah, it's just the opposite though.
yeah, it's counterintuitive because it's a lot easier to control if you have plenty to work with. But I found in teaching that that's something that a lot of students, it takes a while for them to figure that out.
Mhm.
Maybe with watercolor too, that we get it too pale.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know, with oil, I mean, one of the beautiful things about watercolor, in my opinion, is that, you get these wonderful transparent passages, and in oil, I think it's kind of the opposite, in that you got this thick texture, sculptural paint, and which is one of the things that I try in my paintings to achieve as well, is it not just making a good image and not just getting, my color relationships and value relationships right, but also the finished product should have some interesting textural variety to it. I don't want everything to be thick paint. I don't want it all to be thin paint. I want there to be a mix, if possible. Now, I want to paint some clouds in here. And this is where one of the places where the chromatic black comes in handy, because I can take that and mix it with titanium white, and it gives me this real pale gray, which by itself in isolation, it doesn't look like much, but it's actually more colorful than if you took like a regular black, a lamp black and white or something like that. And it just makes for a colorful gray that's more natural. I don't know how well that's showing up on your screens because it's a very slight variation. The value in the gray that I'm putting on now is not much different from the blue of the sky that I put in, but when I put some highlights on those clouds, you'll be able to see it.
We can see it. Yes, the gray between the blue. That's really nice.
So Richard, are you using chromatic black as a convenience color because you use it often enough that you don't want to mix it?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. It's not a true black. It doesn't
No, I know that.
But
yep.
But it is very handy for making natural looking greens and natural looking cloud shadows. And so, yeah, I guess you could call it a convenience color. But the thing is, I don't use enough of it to warrant, getting a tube of quinacridone red and another tube of phthalocyanine and emerald and mixing my own. I guess I could do that, but I like to travel light, especially when I'm doing plein air stuff.
Yeah.
I take as few tubes of paint as possible with me. This is actually, for me, a pretty expansive palette. I used to paint for a long time. I just painted with, 3 primaries in white, which I think actually was very helpful in a lot of ways. Because, when I was going to art center a lifetime ago, I'd go get paints. I'd be in the art supply store and I see other students there and they've got this basket full of, 47 different paint tubes. And, they had everything they needed, but I wondered, how are you going to learn how to mix color? And
makes it harder, I guess.
Yeah. And then, so a lot of them, they learned to paint, but they didn't learn to mix color until maybe, hopefully later on, something got a hold of them and they said, I better learn how to make this. And the other thing that I'll sometimes do, there's that old adage that color gets all the attention, but value does all the work. So if you want to test that sometimes, if you want to get a painting that's very, very natural looking, try using a modified Zorn palette. So in a modified Zorn palette, instead of using Cad Lemon, my yellow would be yellow ochre. And I would use the chromatic black instead of an ultramarine. And it really mutes everything down, and to the point where you have to use accurate values to make anything look, like it's what it's supposed to be. But it really teaches you how to pay attention to value and get the most out of it. So if, even if you don't feel like that's something that you need to work on, it's a really good experiment to do to see what you can get out of those very muted colors.
Rich, I have a question.
Sure.
When you're using the Zorn palette, do you prefer the chromatic black over the ivory black?
Absolutely.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah,
And
I do.
The chromatic is a mix of Viridian and alizarin crimson. Is that what it is?
Close. That you can get an approximation of it. It's actually phthalocyan emerald and quinacridone red.
Oh,
Emerald and
interesting.
red. Wow, that's nice.
Yeah, I like that. I'm running it over to Blix right now and get some.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Cool.
Now, when I'm doing these junipers, again, they tend to look very much the same. And so our job as the artist is to find some variety in them. And if I can't find any variety in them, I'll create some variety in them. One of the things that I see from time to time in these junipers, depending on what time of, the year it is, sometimes they get a bit reddish. So maybe I'll take something with a little warmer and I'll introduce some of that in here. Doesn't need to be a lot, but it's a little bit different than all the others around it. This has got a little bit cooler highlight color in it. This is a little warmer. And it's just enough to make it feel believable by the time I'm done.
Beautiful.
Well, I happen to believe that God gives us really good models. And you'll notice I've done so far, this is all with one brush. I know a lot of people will show up to paint and they've got, these brush wallet things, these bamboo things that have, they got 37 brushes in them. And, if that's what you want to do, go ahead. I tell people all the time, I'll show you the way I paint. It's not the only way to paint, obviously. But for me, I'd rather be able to make as many marks as I can, as many different marks as I can with one brush, because that way I'm going to be able to travel a little bit lighter. And, it's one thing if I'm driving to Vasquez Rocks and getting out of the car and painting. It's another if I'm hiking back 5 miles. I don't necessarily want to be dragging a bunch of extra weight,
Yes.
And the other thing that I think is always a good idea, nobody wants to do color charts, but I still think that they're valuable in learning how to mix color. But the other thing is, take whatever brushes you have and find out how many different kinds of marks it can make. I mean, this is a flat, and well, that's the wrong color to do it with. Let me show you in a minute. Show you something darker. Again, I don't know how many people take me up on it, but it's a good thing to do. I've done it myself. You got to learn how many marks your brush can make. I mean, this is a flat. It can do this. It can do that. You can use the side of it to get some other kind of dry brush thing. That's just 3 different effects right there with one brush. So you see how fine a line that is right there.
She's a liar. I don't know if anybody else, but it's just out of my sight. I can't.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Here, let me do that again. Let me find somewhere where you can see it. I'll do it here. So you can make this mark. Same brush. You can make that mark. You can use the edge of the brush and do kind of a dry brush thing. That's 3 different types of marks from one brush, right? So they're very versatile, but a lot of times people don't take the time to figure out what their brushes are capable of. And so instead they have, to make those 3 marks, they would use 3 different brushes. I will very, very often use, usually not one brush, but maybe 2 brushes to do an entire painting. And it's not a big deal. It's not that it makes it a better painting necessarily, but it's a lot easier if I don't have to bring, more equipment with me.
I tend to do that and I work in the studio.
Yeah. Well, I do it in the studio too, because it's my plein air habit, right? All right. So I got some it is Vasquez rocks that we're doing. So let me put some rocks in where they were.
Yep.
You know, I fought against painting the main rock formation at Vasquez for so long.
Really?
Yeah.
Because?
Excuse me. Because everything I've seen from there, you know, every other painter always paints the main rock formation.
That's true.
And I thought, well, I'm not going to do that. And there's so much other, you know, material there to paint.
Yeah.
That's every bit as interesting. But then I finally had a student at a class that wanted me to do a demo of it. And so I reluctantly did so. And I thought, turned out, well, that's a lot of fun to paint that.
It sure is.
I get why people do it. It's such a dramatic thing. And, you know, if you got, I don't know, how many of you guys know who Lori Putnam is? Anybody?
Yes.
Right. Well, she's a pretty well-known landscape painter. She lives in Franklin, Tennessee. She's a good friend of mine. And when she came out here a couple of years ago to visit, I took her to Vasquez Rocks because, you know, she told me her exact words were, "Rich, teach me how to paint rocks. We don't have rocks in Tennessee." So
That's a lot of rocks there.
That's a lot of rocks.
Well, just for the record, she didn't need me to teach her how to paint anything. She's perfectly proficient herself. She's a good painter. But I did take her over there and she was blown away because she'd never seen anything like that. And I find that there's a lot of people in other parts of the country who, you know, I drive past Vasquez all the time and I go there and paint all the time and I go there and hike with my family and it's just kind of there, right? But there are people in other parts of the country that find it amazing. And I think they're right, you know.
It looks like a big cartoon though.
Flintstones.
Yes, it looks like the Flintstones.
It has that look, yeah. But
it is just beautiful. It's so alive.
Yeah, I think we're blessed to have that something like that so close.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get in here and add a little bit of dark, warm red and make that shadow crease there. So it's not the same. So even a shape like this shadow that I'm painting there, the recessed area of this between these two rocks, I want to make sure that it's not the same all the way. You know, it's a little bit narrower over here. It's a little darker and thicker here. I want variety. If I can get it, I want variety in everything that I'm doing. It'll make it feel more believable, more natural. And I also feel like I want to warm that up. It's a little too chalky for my taste. So I'm going to get a bit more of the cad orange. And, you know, really, one of the things that I find helps me is just to keep in mind that whatever I'm painting, I want to try and paint every square inch of the painting as well as I'm capable of. You know, it's really easy sometimes at the end of a day, or you know, I've been outside, I've painted 3 paintings already or something. It's easy to kind of lose your focus and start doing things kind of halfway, you know. And I really try to stay away from that and make sure I'm doing the best I can with every part of it. And that doesn't mean, you know, a lot of definition everywhere, a lot of detail. You know, sometimes painting something as well as it can be painted. If it's an area right over here at the bottom corner of the painting, maybe painting it as well as it can be painted means keeping it kind of nebulous and not putting a lot of detail in there because you don't want to draw the eye there, right?
Right.
But always paint with intent. You know what you're doing and why you're doing it. Because we all have, you know, times where we kind of zone out a little bit. Next thing you know, we're kind of dabbing at things without any real idea why. And that can turn your painting south in a hurry. So if you find yourself doing something and you're not sure why you're doing it, put the brush down, step away, get something to drink, you know, go do something to the brain usually learns things or is able to concentrate on things for maybe 15 to 20 minutes at a time in a very, very deep mode. And after that, it needs to reset. So it's a good idea to step away and let your brain reset. Come back to it, 5-10 minute break, come back to it, and you probably will find yourself able to concentrate and focus better. Now, this is all still very thin, but I want variety in all this ground cover. And I don't want the bare canvas or nearly bare canvas showing through. By the way, that's why none of you have asked, and I suspect you're all, kind of beyond that point, but I've had people ask me before, why do I tone my canvases instead of just painting on a white canvas? And as I said earlier, I like variety and texture, and that means that there's going to be some areas that are very thin. And as it dries, it's entirely possible that the paint can contract a little bit, and then you get these little flecks of the white canvas showing through where it makes no sense. And I don't want that to happen. So in case anybody is wondering about toning the canvas, that's the reason that I do it. Plus, when you put a sort of a gray tone on there, it's easier to accurately judge value and temperature of your other paints than judging it against white. I want to keep this juniper behind that rock. And when I'm painting things like a lot of different bushes, plants, trees, whatever, I'll make some very direct strokes, but I'll also, push the brush and pull it and twist it. And because again, this is organic matter and I don't want it to look too pristine and perfect.
And which brush are you using?
I'm still
Is it
using
ivory?
The same
this
one.
is still Princeton Aspen. It's a number 8. I think I said it was a number 6 earlier. It's a number 8.
Oh, which Rosemary and Co brush would you use? The ivory flat or what?
Yeah, I like the ivories. Let me see which one I have here. I have a number of them. Yeah, I like the long flats personally more than the brights. I never buy filberts.
Oh, okay.
Not that I don't like filberts. It's just that if I use a long flat long enough, it's going to become a filbert.
Right.
So why buy them separately? They're just my old flats. So as I'm looking around this, one of the things I need to start thinking, okay, so I've got this dry wash that's leading in this way. And eventually I've got this color, up here, where the gold fields were, and I might put some other things in there. But so essentially, this is my lead in up to here. This is kind of the payoff, focal point, if you will. So what does that mean? I'm going to make sure that if I have any hard edges, it's going to be closer to this focal point. If I have, and with this stuff, I might not have too many of them because it's just sort of the nature of these plants is that there's not a lot of hard edges. But if there are any hard edges, like at the ground level, where these two, the ground cover and the bush itself, where they meet, I would have hard edges there. Perhaps I've got sun coming from back this way off to the left, so it would make sense that maybe I get a little bit of shadow going down here. And it's not a real dark shadow because there's all these things growing up from the ground obscuring it, but it does give you an idea of what's going on there. And let's start with a thin layer here. Somebody have a swig of a nice cool drink there?
Who was that?
I don't know who that was, but you're making me thirsty. Okay. Now, I've got one more. I'm going to go ahead and put another juniper here because I wanted to get a cast shadow across there. That's what the initial plein air study had, and I liked that element of it.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so this is, again, this is very thin. If it was thicker paint and I was going to go dark, I'd have to scrape it back, but I feel like I can go right over the top of it because it's nice and thin. And of course, anytime you're blowing up a painting from a smaller size, you have to be ready to make some alterations because there are parts in the small painting where there's not much going on and it's not a big deal. But then you do it larger, and now you got a large area where there's nothing going on, which may or may not work so well. So I'm going to fill that area in and get a shadow going right across here. These pauses where you're not seeing my brush, by the way, is just me cleaning the brush. Okay. So for the dirt area there, I'm going to mix up a lavender color. Bring it across. Now right here, I've got some grass. So the shadow on it shouldn't be lavender there. It should be a darker green. So I need to bring that in. And similarly on the other side here, got that sort of a orangey green. So if I add a little of that lavender to that, I can get a little darker. You get an approximation of that dried grass and shadow. So this cast shadow has 3 different colors in it because the shadow is being cast upon things that are 3 different colors. So we have to remember that. I've seen a lot of people do paintings where they just make the shadow one color all the way. And like, well, wait a minute, it's different material there. You want to acknowledge that. But, you know, what I'm about to say is something that I'm sure you guys have all figured out. Anybody can paint, but not anybody can paint well. It actually takes a lot of work and a lot of thinking to get everything figured out to where it works, you know. I always get a kick out of it, and I don't mean any disrespect, but when people walk by when I'm out painting, if I'm plein air painting, and they'll say, "Oh, that looks so relaxing." Yeah, it looks relaxing, but don't be fooled. I mean, in a sense, it is. It's what I love to do, right? But it takes an awful lot of intellectual activity. I don't know of too many any other activities that I've ever engaged in where not only do you have to come up with all the right answers, you got to first figure out what are the right questions to ask. You know, it's not nobody's giving you a problem and saying, you know, here's the problem, what's the answer? You got to look at it and figure out what's going right and what's going wrong, and how do you change it. All this is ground cover here, so when I was talking about different things that the brush can do, now I'm going to use just the corner of it, lay down a stroke, and then lift it up so it looks like, you know, little bits of weeds or whatever in front of the yellow flowers.
Is your base color for all those greens the chromatic black?
For all these greens?
Yeah.
It's chromatic black with a bit of cad lemon and a bit of cad red.
And the lighter greens on the bottom left?
Here?
Yeah.
That started with, okay, so that started with the highlight color for the junipers, and then I just added a tiny bit of cad orange and a lot of the sky color that I had, the blue.
Oh. Okay.
It's a light blue. So were there any of you that thought I was going to say, and then I added white? Anybody?
Nope.
Okay, good. Because that's the usual assumption, is that when you're lightening something, you're adding white. And, you know, in the light blue, there is some white, but the point I'm making is anytime you have to lighten a color, you want to add the next lightest color on the color wheel rather than going straight to white, because if you go straight to white, you get really, really chalky really fast. And that's not something that I want. Okay, I need to develop this some. That was just a base color that I threw down. And this is all a bunch of nebulous, you know, weeds and low bushes. And more importantly, what's going on right here isn't terribly important to the painting. It's a supporting element, if you will. So I don't have to get real, you know, put copious amounts of information in here. I don't like the word detail, because really there's not a lot of detail in any of my paintings. It's just, they're just, you know, symbols that represent something. But you all have to figure out the way that your brains work the best. The way I am, if I start thinking of things in terms of what they are, like that's a rock, that's a tree, that's a twig, whatever, I start painting them exactly like that. I'll do little portraits of them. And that's not going to work within the context of an entire painting necessarily. So I just look at them and say, that's a shape. And I need to paint something that represents that shape. And if I get the value right, and if I get the color close, it usually turns out fairly well. Okay. I've got this is really thin and it's dark, but there's other stuff going on. It's not just a big black hole there. So even the shadowed portions of that juniper, I can go over this and I'll leave some of the really dark stuff showing through. And those will be the deep, you know, recessed parts of that juniper. And if I need to, I can go back and restate some of that by going darker still. And maybe get a little warmth in there just to bring it forward. Same here. But it's starting to look like what I want it to look like. It's getting there.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you. I need a lot of work here. That's too uniform. If I've got these rocks that are laying on top of each other and they may look exactly like that, but if I find it distracting because they look too odd, I'm going to change them. And it might be just something like that, but I don't want them to look exactly the same. Warm it up a little bit in the shadowed part of that rock. Maybe change the shape a little bit. And this is where, you know, you think about design, it's not just leading the eye through, but it's also getting shapes that are more interesting. And sometimes you got to be careful not to make them so interesting that they're garnering a lot of attention in a part of the painting where you don't want it. So there's kind of a juggling act that goes on. But to me, that's starting to look a lot more reasonable.
Rich?
Yes.
Do you think like 10 minutes or so would?
Yeah, that's whatever you guys want. Like I said, I didn't expect to finish a painting today, but what I will do is finish it up and send it to you if any of your members want to take a look at the finished product.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we definitely would love to see that.
Does anybody have any questions about anything I've been talking about here? Or have I made things pretty clear? Or
Who is the painter who most influenced you in your landscape work?
that's good. Well, early on, I would say Clyde Aspavig, but and I mean I still say he's an immense influence on me. And in case none of you have met him or any of you, he's a wonderful guy too. I had the pleasure of meeting him at one of the conventions, the plein air conventions. But the more I learned, the more I studied, there, some of the Russian and Ukrainian landscape painters, Timkov and oh geez, now their names are escaping me because I have to tell them to you. Some of the real well-knowns, the ones that came here, were phenomenal. Nikolai Fechin.
Oh, goodness, yes.
Yeah, they just, there's a different thing going on with those guys. They have just beautiful work. Isaac Levitan and
Oh, yeah.
they're all the big names. They're big names for a reason.
Yep.
But yeah,
What
those
about
are
from
some
the
of-
masters or from,
Well,
historical artists, Rich?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to go with Sargent and Soroya, but again, there's good
Oh,
reason
wow.
for that.
How about Chekhov?
I'm sorry?
Chekhov.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many that I can't possibly remember them all. There's
All right.
there are a number of them who everybody's heard of, and there's others that I find out about them and I think, how come I've never heard of this person? There's so many talented painters out there, even contemporary painters. There's some of them today that just blow my mind. There's a guy up in Idaho. What the heck is his name now? Young guy. He just won the plein air salon at the convention last year. Of course, I can't think of his name now that I need it. But there's so many people, and there's so many different ways to get where you want to go. My daughter she's just finished her freshman year at university in Tennessee, and her boyfriend is an art major, and he's himself is Ukrainian, and he thinks that the only way to study is the old-fashioned Russian atelier and all that, and obviously it's a great way to learn. You see the results. But then you got people like Matt Smith,
Did you mean Scott Christensen in Idaho, Chris?
No, that's not who I was thinking. I was thinking about somebody that's younger than Scott, but Scott's a great example too. I mean, he's a wonderful painter.
Yeah.
And they didn't spend 3 years just painting cylinders and cones, and there's other ways to learn. So yeah, at this point, I'd say the early ones were probably, like I said, Clyde Aspavig, Scott Christensen, Matt Smith. But then there's guys like Michael Lynch, who all of those other guys learned from, and he's a phenomenal painter. The more you learn, the more you realize there's just so much.
Yep. So beautiful.
So I'm not gonna finish the sky right now because it's gonna take a bit of time, but I am gonna put a couple real quick color notes here, and then we can call it done. I will release you guys from your bondage here.
Enjoyable bondage.
Yeah, well, I can't thank you enough for letting me do this today.
It's our pleasure, Rich.
Aside from the fact that I really love doing this, you guys, every little bit helps me do what I love for a living, and that is never lost on me. I really appreciate that.
We really appreciate you.
Great teacher.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So again, people love the poppies, so there's nothing wrong with popping a couple of them in there just to pretty it up a little bit, but you don't want to do it
color. Yeah.
You just do it here, they're isolated, just something over here, maybe something up there, but don't do it too much. So I think I'm going to stop right there if that's okay with you guys, and if anybody has any questions, please feel free.
Any other questions?
When you travel, do you limit your size to a particular size?
Well, yeah, I used to paint no larger than 11 by 14s. And I use primarily I use my OpenBox M easel, and but some of the competitions that I go to, people like larger paintings, and so I have a Soltech easel as well, and that can accommodate much larger canvases. I'm perfectly comfortable doing a plein air piece that's 18 by 24, as long as my easel can accommodate it. So yeah, I don't think I've done anything bigger than 18 by 24 outdoors.
Got it.
How about in your studio? What is the biggest?
The biggest is so far, there's a 48 by 48 that's sitting across from me over here, but you're not going to see it because there's a mountain of other paintings in front of it.
Oh, yeah.
Might you be able to move your phone closer to the piece you're working on now so that we can see some of the details?
Oh, good. Oh.
Wow.
That better?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Right on.
Yeah. Take a picture.
So I'll finish that up, and Zoni, can I just send the image to you?
Yes, just send it over and I'll send.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Liz and I can send that over.
Yeah.
Will do.
To the group. Liz, turning it over to you.
All right. Richard, thank you so much. This was absolutely outstanding and a joy to watch. I'm really happy that we've recorded this because we'll be able to watch this again and
I will too. God, look at the painting now.
Yeah, and you got me inspired to go up to Vasquez Rocks. So I may run into you one day.
Yeah, there's a lot of pretty, and then in the fall, it's really pretty there too. I don't know how many people go down right near the 14 freeway, almost down below it. There's a canyon down there, and there's a stream and cottonwoods, and it's beautiful. Yeah, really something.
Check that out.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Richard. Anyone else have any questions before we close our meeting? Okay, Richard, thank you.
I was either sure or I bored everybody to death.
No, that was incredible. It was absolutely spectacular.
Can
Well,
I say,
again, thank you so much.
Can I say hi to you, hi to Lynn for you?
Absolutely.
You
Yeah, give her my best.
At Vasquez Rock next Thursday.
What time are you guys going to be there?
I don't know. We'll get out there about 9:30, probably.
I have a regular Thursday morning private student, but maybe we'll show up and paint there just to say hello.
Wants to come, they can come.
Great.
Good enough. All right, folks. Thank you so much.
Do you live in Tennessee? Where do you live?
Oh, no.
Palmdale.
I'm in Palmdale. Yeah.
Oh,
I live in Palmdale. Yeah, my daughter
just moved to Franklin, Tennessee. I'm really excited to hear that Lori Putman lives there. That's incredible.
Oh yeah. Yeah, she's got a nice, she and her husband Mark built a well, it's a studio with some living space in it. It's not a house with a studio in it. It's a gigantic studio that has a bit of living space.
Nice.
That's
Excuse
awesome.
me, I think Arlene has something to say. Arlene, did you want to make an announcement? No? Okay. Okay. Don't forget to vote, everyone.
Yes, please. It will go
Executive
up today.
officers and our jury will be there.
Exactly.
Okay, ladies, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good
Thank you,
weekend.
guys.
Happy Mother's Day,
everyone.
moms.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.